All right, everybody, welcome back. You know how much we love to really dig into the things you're curious about?
Yeah.
And one that's popped up a few times is the Electoral College. So today we're going to do a deep dive into that.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's certainly generated a lot of questions over the years.
It really has. And, to get us started, we found this really interesting article. I think it's going to be a good jumping off point. It's from the New York Times for Kids section.
Okay.
Yeah, published on November 1st, 2024. So pretty recent.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think it'll help us kind of break down some of the basics before we get into, all the nitty gritty.
Well, and I think, the fact that it's for kids is interesting too, right? I mean,
Definitely.
it sort of speaks to how sometimes we take for granted, even like the basics of how our government works.
Yeah.
So starting with something that's meant to explain it to kids might be a really good way for us to like refamiliarize ourselves too.
Absolutely. And they use these fun illustrations in it too, so it's very approachable. But it makes this main point that I think is really important to start with, which is that the Electoral College, it's not actually like a school or, like an institution in that sense.
Yeah.
It is the system that we use to elect the President of the United States.
Exactly. And I think what's interesting is that they sort of focus on the what and not the how in this article.
Yeah.
It just tells you that it is how we do it, but it doesn't go into the mechanics of how it actually functions, which I think is a really good kind of jumping off point for us.
Right. Yeah. It's telling us, hey, this is the thing now. Go figure out what this thing is all about.
Right. Exactly.
And the fact that it was published, November 1st, right before an election in the kids section.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, like, are they trying to, prepare these kids for what they're about to see and hear about?
That's a good question. Or maybe it's just, they figured this is a good time to educate,
Yeah,
young citizens about this important part of their democracy.
totally. And they even say, in the article, and if we're honest, it's pretty confusing.
Right.
So they're acknowledging right off the bat.
Yeah. I love that they put that in there because it really is.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great place for us to start then, right? Like,
Okay.
we know what it is. What other questions come to mind for you when we think about the Electoral College?
Well, I think the first thing is like, we've all heard about the popular vote and how sometimes the person who wins the popular vote doesn't actually become president.
Right.
So like, how does that even work?
Yeah.
How is it that you can have more people vote for one person and a different person becomes president?
So that's where this whole idea of electoral votes comes in.
Okay.
So each state gets a certain number of electoral votes based on its population.
Okay.
And so when you vote on a presidential election, you're not actually directly voting for the president. You're voting for a group of people called electors who are pledged to vote for that candidate.
So it's like a point system almost.
Right. Exactly. It is a point system. And to win the presidency, a candidate needs to get a majority of the electoral votes, which is currently 270 out of 538.
Okay, so that's how you can have a situation where somebody wins the popular vote but doesn't get enough of those electoral votes to actually become president.
Right. And in most states, they have what's called a winner-take-all system,
Oh.
which means whoever wins the most votes in that state gets all of that state's electoral votes.
Gotcha. So even if it's really close, like, somebody wins by like a tiny margin, they still get all those points.
Exactly. And that's happened,
Oh, yeah.
a few times in U.S. history where the person who won the popular vote didn't get enough electoral votes to become president, and it always sparks a lot of debate about whether the Electoral College is really the best way to elect the president.
Yeah, because it does seem kind of strange that it's not just, whoever gets the most votes from all the people
Right.
wins. So is there like a reason why we have this system in place?
Well, the Founding Fathers, they had a lot of reasons for creating the Electoral College. One of the main reasons was that they were worried about giving too much power to large states.
Yep.
They wanted to make sure that smaller states still had a voice in the election.
That makes sense.
And they also wanted to create a system that would encourage candidates to campaign in all parts of the country, not just in the big cities.
Okay.
So that was kind of their thinking behind it. But obviously, there's been a lot of debate over the years about whether it's still a fair and effective system.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it can create some pretty surprising outcomes.
Right.
So if somebody's listening and they're thinking, okay, I want to learn more about this, like, what are some things they could look into?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things to look into is, those specific instances in U.S. history where the winner of the popular vote didn't become president,
Okay.
there's a lot of really interesting stories and a lot of controversy surrounding those elections.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really interesting to look into the arguments for and against the Electoral College. There's a lot of people who are very passionate about both sides of that issue.
Right.
And I think it's a really important conversation to be having as we think about, the future of our democracy.
So it sounds like there's a lot more to this than meets the eye.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it.
Yeah. Well, this has been really interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like we've definitely gotten a better grasp on, at least what the Electoral College is, even if we don't have all the answers yet.
Right, exactly.
So that was our deep dive on the Electoral College.
Yeah.
We learned it's not a school, it's the system we use to elect the president. It's all about these electoral votes and not just, the popular vote like we might think.
Right. And the winner-take-all system in most states can really change the outcome of an election.
Yeah, definitely some food for thought there.
So as you go and do your own research on this, think about this. Does the Electoral College actually represent the will of the people the way it's supposed to, or is it time for a change?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, we didn't even get into that today. So much to think about.
Yeah.
Definitely worth exploring further.
Absolutely.
Well, everybody, thanks for joining us for this deep dive on the Electoral College.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Keep those questions coming, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.